Okay, so we are going back to Per Gimel Talmud Torah Halacha test, and I actually said something in the chat, which I realized we have to modify this, which is if we get past this. What I said is that we're going to do Halacha 9, and then I said we already did Halacha 10 and 11 when we talked about being paid for Torah, but I realized that I think it's going to change the way we read it in context now. So I want to just explore a little bit of the changes in context. Obviously, we're not going to take up the whole sugya, but I think it's a good idea to do. Okay, so let's reread what we did yesterday with Tess. Divrei Torah nimshlu b'mayim. So the words of Torah are compared to water. It's funny because when I was looking into the sources of this, I realized that this is part of a Gemara where there are several memras that compare Torah to 3 different liquids. Torah is compared to water, and then the other 2. Yeah, wine. Yeah. Oil. Oh, that is a good guess. Probably somewhere is compared to oil. Wait, hold on a second. I think the Gemara that this is quoting from compares it to milk. Okay, but oil probably somewhere. It says oil. Yeah. So I don't know what those other ideas are there. I didn't actually look at the Gemara. I just looked at where it was. But it's interesting. He only picks the water one. So he says, Shneimar says, "Hoi kol samei l'chulamayim." All who are thirsty go to water, and their water is again much for Torah. Lomer lacha. This is telling you mahamayim emis kansim b'makom midron. Just as water only gathers in a low place, does not gather on an incline. Rather, it flows on its own and gathers in a depression. So too, you can only learn Torah when you're depressed. No, I'm just kidding. So too, you can only learn Torah. So too, Torah is not found in people who are haughty, and not in someone whose heart is high. I don't know the difference between gasus ruach and gova lev. I think gasus ruach is a lashon chazal. I think gova lev is the way that the Tanakh uses it. I don't know why he has to say both. Ella bedaka ushval ruach, rather someone who's crushed and low-spirited. Shemis abik ba'apar raglei chachamim, who wallows in the dust of the chachamim. Which, by the way, I said this verbally yesterday, but Kafech on their quotes. I don't think he's quoting. He mentions that the misabik ba'apar raglei chachamim, which you could just take to mean that like you learn at the feet of chachamim. Kafach says, "Umafarsho Rabbeinu lahachnea bifnei rabosav." Rambam explains this. This means you have to be submissive before your teachers. So I don't think the Rambam says that on Avos, unless I missed it. I think he's saying that from the Rambam bringing it in here, it's clear that he holds that it has to do with humility. I don't know if that's the only shot of that memra. Umesir hata'avos v'tanugei hazman milibo, and he removes desires and temporal enjoyments from his heart. Okay, and I saw a funny thing in Kafach here also. I thought it was funny. So he says the Gemara there in Eruvin. Apparently the source is in Eruvin. Actually, let's just get it up here just so we can see it. I'm only reading this because it's funny. If we get ideas, then that's a bonus. Eruvin Nun Dalid Amud Aleph. Oh my, Ervin's big. Okay. Nun Dalid Amud Aleph. Okay, and yeah, Amar Rav. Let me make it bigger. Okay, Amar Rav Huna. My dichsiv chaysacha. I got the vowels right. Chayasacha yashvuba tachim betovascha leani elokim. Don't know exactly how to translate that. Your chaya, your animal. I don't know if pshat is animal or if that's just the drush. Yeah, it says thy flock settled therein, thou didst prepare in thy goodness for the poor. Okay, fine. So I think, but the drush is going to be about a wild animal. Im adam mesim atmo kachaya zov. If the person makes himself into a wild animal, should doresis velochelas, that it like tears and eats, right? Like a carnivore, right? The ikad amri. Okay, so that's one interpretation. The ikadamri, others say shemas reches velochelas, that it allows it to rot and then eats. Okay, talmudo miskayim biado, then his learning will remain in his hand. Vim lav ain't talmudo miskayim biado, then his learning will not remain in his hand. So it's machlokas, how should you be like an animal? I guess some animals tear and eat, and then other animals are like scavenger animals or whatever, that like hyenas, they'll like eat dead animals, carrion, right? So the funny thing is Kafich quotes from oh, sorry. So first of all, he explains. He says, "Pirusho, what does this mean in the Gemara? Shu shakua." Oh, you know what? I'm not just putting this on the screen. Hold on. That was the whole point of going there. Okay, whatever. He said, Kafik says, "Upirusha shu shakua blimudo." He's so immersed in his learning. Vein dai topnuya leochel, and he's not free to eat. Umaspi ka ochel lahasriach, and it allows the food to go bad. Okay, achu magia elav, before he reaches it. And this is the funny part. This is the punchline. V'ayin Ravid shuvos psachim mahadurasi amud kuf tesvav. So the Ravid says in one of his chuvos, he says, "V'kama machalos chisrachti shlo achalti osam v'itam al esek haTorah." He says, "I've let so much food go bad because of all the time that I've been spending like learning Torah, and then the food rots by the time I get to it." So I just picture like the Ravid's wife like always just getting mad at him, like honey, like you let the meat go bad again. And I'm also like saying this because maybe you got to wait for your food to get here. Oh, there we go. Perfect timing. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Sure. Okay. Yeah. It was just so that we can do this Gemara here. Yeah. Okay. So now you just have to wait until it goes bad.
Does the Rambam agree with the Rambam?
So the Rambam doesn't say what it means, right? He just says, remove the taivos of Tanuge Hazman. He doesn't take a judgment on how it's like an animal, because sorry. I forgot to share the screen again, because the Kavach first quoted the Rashi, which this to me seems more like the Rambam. Rashi seems more like the Rambam. I didn't look at Rashi inside.
I don't know.
What was that, Yosef?
What halacha are you in now?
Tess, yeah. Oh yeah. So the Kafik references Rashi. So Rashi says shedureses vocheles miyad la'achar harigasa. Immediately after killing it, she'enu makbid al tanugim. It means that you're not makbid on tanugim. Ela ochel basar below tavlin. He eats meat without spices. V'chein shar inugim, and also the other enjoyments. So that's kind of like the eating bread with pasba melech tochal. Eat bread with salt. Meaning that just the bare minimum without fanciness in like opulence, that does seem to be more like the Rambam saying like remove ta'anugim from your heart, Okay, v'osem malacha b'chol yom ma'at kadei chayav, do a little bit of work each day in order to live. Im lo haya lo ma'yochal, if he doesn't have anything to eat. Someone told me, sure, it's possible it was Rabbi Moskowitz, that I don't know if this is just urban legend, but the Chavetz Chaim would basically do that. He would work he would work until he made enough money for the next day, and then he'd go and learn, Ushar Yom V'Leilo Osek B'Torah, and then for the rest of your day and night, be involved in Torah. So this is what I was alluding to when I said yesterday that you were saying the Rambam doesn't tell you positively what to do, he just tells you negatively. And I said like the implication is that like with all this other time that you're creating, you're involved in Torah. So this is the first time he explicitly mentions that, right? Is the Shar Yomo V'Leilo Osek B'Torah,
My question wasn't when you use that time. It wasn't like
How do you learn in a way that right. Until here, right? Until here, right, correct, yeah. Ma'at kadei chayav, yeah. Now again, this is something that I do have problems with. That if you take this at absolute literal level, because I don't think, again, I don't know whether that story about the Chavetz Chaim is true. I don't know what his life circumstances were, but I don't think it just means make enough money to live paycheck to paycheck. And the reason why is because Shlomo Melech, Chacham Mikol Adam, says you should learn from the ant who prepares food in the summer so that she has food in the winter,
That could just be if you don't do it in the summer, you'll spend more time in the winter. So it's like total time. It could just be you have to maximize your long-term time.
That could be as well, right? But I guess my point though is that it's not that you should be nearsighted about it; it's that you should be wise about it. And or another example of this is my friend Rabbi Dr. Ben Aronson runs a summer camp for like kids with severe disabilities, and so during that like I don't know if it's like a month and a half or 2 months. He is one of these things where he's working from 6 a.m. to like midnight, or whatever, So he always quotes the Gemara, and I don't know which man Amar this is, but there's a Gemara that says that there was one of the like Chazal who would say don't talk to me during like the 2 harvest months or whatever, because like I'm just working all the time, but like he works all the time then so that he can be involved in working like in learning like for the rest of the time. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, it's initially, yeah. It could be. Right. That could definitely be, right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, right. It could be. I guess the end of that, those psukim in Mishlei say that if you don't do this, and now it's also talking to a lazy person, but he does warn that he says your poverty will come like an armed man and your lack like a traveling soldier or whatever, And so the idea is like you don't want to be caught with nothing to eat, But yeah, it could be that also. Oh, there's another Rambam that I actually have to. All right, maybe Rambam we have to go to at the end of the parak. Just remind me, maybe in the Rambam when he talks about anyone could be a Levi.
No, but that.
Yeah.
What?
Okay. Oh, we can. Okay, fine. We can do it after we do this halakha. Okay. Because it does seem to contradict stuff. But okay. So just going back to what we just read here. So yesterday we were saying how does arrogance preclude Keser Shel Torah? So we said several things. Number one, in the actual process of learning, your haughtiness will affect your ability to get truth, either because you won't admit when you're wrong, or you'll like think you're as far as great, or like you won't listen to other people, or you'll be involved in competition, whatever it is. Then we also mentioned that the learning is not going to be real to you. That it's going to interfere with basically the whole point of the learning is so that you internalize it and you recognize what your place is in the universe, really, and your learning could get in the way of that. That's like the Rambam saying, if you're haughty, you're kofar be'ikar. The thing that I was wondering about is when he says that water gathers in a low place. So we were saying that means you should make yourself into like a low place, right? That's the implication of the Chazal. What I was wondering is, does this have to fit into the pasuk in Yeshayahu? Or does the pasuk in Yeshayahu is he only using that to show that Torah is compared to water? Because in Yeshayahu, he's telling you not how you get Torah, but how you find Torah, which would mean, according to that, the implication would be that you should seek it out from people who are humble, which is going to be like the Rambam says in Perek Daled. I don't think that's pshat, but in other words, it sounds like he's only telling you how you get Torah. Or do you intend to unmute? Because I could hear a bunch of stuff going on, like vacuuming or something.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah. Right. So it sounds like he's just quoting Yeshayahu to get that Torah is like water, right? Okay, fine. So now the question, so we got that, we got how this has to express itself in submissiveness to your chachamim that you learn from. So the last question is, how do you unify the halacha? What does the haughtiness stuff have to do with the removing taivos and tanugei hazman milibo, and then working a little bit to get enough to eat? That sounds like a different idea. Yeah. Okay, I have a possibility. Unless you want to think about it for a second. Sure. Yeah, I have a good possibility.
Well, I don't know. I kind of thought I feel like doing it on the way down.
Sure.
But having like halachos and like
Okay.
But I kind of feel like
Okay, yeah. So you could take that route, because that is how the Torah says it, is Vayishman Yishirun Vayivat, right? That when Klal Yisrael gets too involved in taiva, then they become haughty, and they forget Hashem. Yeah. So I was taking the opposite route, and here's how I was going to put it. Or do you want to say how you meant the opposite?
Well, I don't know how to speak into the wrong one.
Okay.
But I would think the opposite, that someone is more independent time and how to get mine.
Right. Okay.
I want to
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's the route. And here's how I'll say it. Okay. Which is there are two reasons why a person would be involved in Tivos and Tanug Hazman. One is love of pleasure. The other is you want to treat yourself well. Like I deserve comfort and opulence and good food and good clothing and stuff like that. So I don't think he's speaking out against involvement in taiva for pleasure's sake here. I think he's going to talk about that in halacha yud beis, okay, which is later on. So we'll have to reserve judgment on that. I think he's talking here about someone who basically wants a certain standard of living, that like they view it as like beneath their dignity to not be able to have Taivos and Tanug Hazman. And I was laughing earlier because my imagery of the guy with the martini and the Torah, like I think that is actually more apt than I think. It's like he wants to like be able to like have like all these enjoyments, and that's why the Rambam contrasts it with no, just do enough to make a living and enough to eat, and then that's it, So that's my theory. So it's an extension of the Gaiva point.
Well, how do you shouldn't have overland and you shouldn't do raw.
Yeah.
And then I mean, like farming and like farming, like make sure how the man not that but that's how you like.
Right, that's another symptom of Gova Lev, and also a fuel of it. And if you remove yourself from that, and that's like I was saying with my my own orientation with coming to the old YBT building, of like being raised with a different standard of living and then living in squalor in order to learn Torah, and like it does change your ego a little bit, and it was squalor. Yeah. But you hear about this also. Again, I don't really know what the status is of yeshivas in Israel now, but I know that there are yeshivas in my day that had a reputation of like cramming like 10 guys into a room, of like really like yeah. Right, yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right, so now let's just, again, I don't want to reanalyze the whole sugi, but I do think there's an interesting light that's shed on what we read last time, what we did before in light of this. So now the next halacha, kol hamesim al libo sheyasuk b'torah v'lo yaseh malacha, anyone who sets his heart on being involved in Torah and not doing work, v'yis parnas minat tzedakah, and is sustained by charity, he desecrates the name, ubizas Torah, degrades the Torah, extinguishes the light of the religion, causes harm to himself, and takes his life from olam haba, because it's usher to derive benefit from Torah in this world. So what new light is shed on this in context? What was that? Yes, yeah. Well, so that okay, that's also true. This is even worse than so far nothing he said advertised destructiveness.
Well, I mean, maybe one time we still doing all the other things.
Yeah. Okay, right. So this is like the anti-Kesser Shel Torah, like the like the antithesis. Yeah, Yosef.
He's saying the reasons that because you're benefiting from Torah, as if to say, if the reason people giving you tzedakah is because you are learning Torah, then because you're benefiting it from it, and therefore connecting Torah to money in your mind.
Right. So that's what we said last time, that you're, actually, this is actually very good, right? So given the thing that we said about lishma and shalol lishma, this is like you're anchoring yourself to a shalol lishma because you're literally making Torah into the way that you sustain yourself, So it's not just connect. I don't know if that's what you meant by connecting Torah to money in your mind, but like you're literally like holding yourself back from ever reaching lishma because your livelihood is dependent on it. So it's like people like lahavdil, if you are a researcher in, let's say, like a scientific field, and let's say like weird example. Let's say like you are researching like the carcinogenic effects of like tobacco, and like you're being funded by a cigarette company, by big tobacco, so it's going to be very hard for you to be objective because your learning is literally being paid for by the exactly right. Yeah. So if your learning is attached to a livelihood, then it's gonna keep you in that lo lishma territory, So I had a different idea, which is this really reminds me of Hilchos Deos. So this is in the beginning of Perek Gimel after he talked about extremes, and he says, Shema Yomar Adam, maybe a person will say, this is Gimel Aleph, Hoil v'taiva v'kavod v'kiyot b'hen derech ra'ahin, since taiva and kavod and are a bad derech, u'motinas adam min olam, and they remove a person from the world, efrosh mehen b'yoser, I will distance myself from them exceedingly. I'll go to the other extreme. And I won't eat meat, I won't drink wine, I won't get married, I won't live in a nice house, I won't wear nice clothing, but just only sackcloth and coarse wool, like the priests, like Catholic priests. Gamzo derech rahi. That's also bad, but also lelachba, and it's also to go in it. So I think there's a similar move the Rambam is making here. He just got through talking about how bad it is to be involved in malacha and schora, So you might say, oh, it's bad to be involved in malacha and schora, and I should minimize my livelihood and be involved in Torah. I'm just going to not work at all, and I'm going to be sustained by Torah, And that's the opposite extreme, which is even worse than being this, So I think it is a like, and the reason why I think this is an important thing is I do think that certainly in the public, I'm gonna forget my phone over there. In the public mindset of that views like kollel learning as a good thing, I think people look at this as an ideal because they're so involved in Torah that they're not even involved in making a livelihood. And he's like speaking against that from his perspective, which we elaborated on last time. Yeah. Right. So I think this does have. It's everything that you guys said also, but like, yeah. Okay, so then we said we spent a lot of time on this next one. Let's just see if there's anything new that we get. Amr Chachamim kol hanen b'divrei Torah natal chayav min ha'olam. The Chachamim said anyone who benefits from words of Torah, his life is taken from the world. So the one new thing we get from there is the Chachamim said, don't make it a crown to glorify yourself with or an axe to chop with. That was explicitly quoted by the Rambam in the lo lishma thing in Chelek. So that's an explicit reference to the lo lishma idea from before. They also said love malacha and hate the rabbanos. The whole Torah inima malacha sofa batela, and any Torah that doesn't have work with it will in the end become batal. Sof adam zem sheyehem malastes as a brios, and this guy's ultimately going to steal from people. So again, I think that could also stem from a similar thing where people will justify the means, the ends justify the means, right? So they'll say Torah is really important. If I have to cheat on my taxes to like be able to keep Torah, then I'll do that. And if I have to like skim a little off the top, like, I deserve this tzedakah anyway. It's very easy to rationalize illegal behavior when you are literally involved in the most important thing in the world. And this is saying, no, like, obviously you can't do that. I do think there's an interesting thing here, which I don't think we talked about last time, ehov es hamalacha, right? You could see someone saying from that top halacha on the page, do a little bit of work in order to make your livelihood, and then the rest in order to make enough to eat. You could see a person viewing work as a necessary evil, and it is objectively speaking, but how can, I guess my question is like this. Yeah, how can you love your work if that's just how you're relating to your work, right? Ehov es hamalacha. What does that mean actually? Exactly, Yeah, Oren?
He says that exact same phrase earlier, I think, when he's talking about how you shouldn't misuse really Torah.
Fun, but it's really
he says love work, or you're saying the phrase, which phrase?
If I remember correctly, we did this earlier, like a couple of weeks ago, the phrase love work and hate.
Yeah. So this is what we did earlier. We skipped earlier, and we went here. Yeah. So you're remembering correctly, but because we did it out of order. See, this is why this is the downside of doing it out of order. Is that
wait? Is this the very same thing we did?
This is the very same halacha. Yeah.
Oh
We're
my
just
God,
going through
okay.
this again. to make sure that we didn't miss anything.
Not sure I call this a downside.
Yeah, and not as a downside, but pitfall. Yeah. But I'm glad you remembered. Yeah. So you're saying it seems a contradiction because
Because we're actually saying like don't like exalt yourself so much anymore. And like you were saying,
yeah,
it doesn't mean like make your arise instead of like desire
Right.
and like make
Right.
plan. Like
Right.
then when you need in that thing,
Yeah.
you can clean it out or whatever that
Yeah.
you already brought up.
Okay, good. So okay, so let me just repeat that and then like rev up the question because I think I have an answer a little. So Chaim's saying like it sounds like this. We just got through saying don't become overly attached to your work. So if he's now saying love your work, well, which one is it? Do I invest my energy in it or not? You know. So I actually have an answer from this week's Parsha. You want to guess what it is? Okay, you're right.
Unfortunately, I didn't get very far yet.
And you're gonna roll your eyes when I say this, and then I'll show you that I have support in the Rishonim. Okay, so it is in 29, I think. So Yaakov Avinu falls in love with Rachel, right? And then Lavan says, okay, fine, he can marry her, and then he tricks him, and it says, "V'yavud Yaakov Rachel sheva shanim v'yihu be'enav kayamim achadim ba'avasa osa." So Yaakov worked for Rachel for 7 years, and it was in his eyes like but a few days because of his love of her. Okay, so yes, okay. Now you roll your eyes. Okay, you roll your eyes. Okay, right. So let me show you where Rabbeinu Yonah in Mishlei applies this to Chachma. Okay, so in Mishlei, when it's talking about what your attitude should be towards Chachma, it says, "Im tavakshena ka kesef v'chamat monim tach v'sena." If you seek it out like silver or money, and you look for it like buried treasures. Okay, so the Rabbeinu Yonah says, "Chamat monim." See, I highlighted. That's how important it is. I didn't highlight for this. Hamala Hamishi is the 5th level in getting Chachma. Okay, you can read the other 4 levels on your own time. Shitis Arev Lenafsho HaChachma V'lo Yihi Alav Iska L'Toreach Merov Ha'ava. So you should not. Chachma should be sweet to you. We say this in the Brachos of Torah every morning, and the involvement in it should not be like a burden due to your tremendous love. As it says by Yaakov, Vayu be'enav kiyamim achadim, that it was like a few days in his own eyes because of his love for Rachel. And now he gives the good analogy. So it's like someone who's searching for treasure, for buried treasure. So you tell this treasure hunter, oh, there's treasure in that house or in that valley. So he's not gonna view it as a chore to dig for that treasure because he has this feeling that he's going to find a tremendous treasure and become instantly rich. Okay, so here's my contention, okay, which is like this, is if a person realizes ein kemach ein Torah, right, that there's no way I can be involved in Torah, or there's no way I can get the Kesser Shel Torah unless I work, and if this is a necessary means to be able to be involved in the Torah, so then his love will attach to his work, not in the sense that he becomes overly attached to it, but I'm doing this as a means of engaging in something worthwhile. You know, it'll be like, okay, here's me waxing poetic now. Now I'm waxing poetic. Is who does the Rambam say was a water carrier later on in this parak? He says, was in this parak? No, not in this parak. That some of the Chazal were water carriers. You will be ushavtem mayim v'sason. You'll draw water in joy, you know, because you'll know that you're doing this in order to be able to work for Torah. It's also very similar to how we praise the Chachamim who would be prepared for Shabbos, and they would do lowly tasks like cutting vegetables and stuff. I saw on Twitter after Rav Moshe Tendler passed away. Then there were these. No, I'm getting 2 people mixed up. Rav Moshe Tendler passed away. This is Rav Reuven Feinstein, who has not passed away. There's these adorable pictures of him and his wife, like grinning and like doing Shabbos preparations, like cutting vegetables and stuff. That if the thing that you're doing is a means of serving a greater good, then you will be involved in it with joy. Or one more example, I remember when we were doing the sugi of lo lishma and lishma, and this is back when Rav Pesach had a theory that you can be involved in doing anything lishma. Now he's changed his theory that it means that you could only use Torah lishma. But the example he gave for doing anything lishma, as he said, I see your hand, is that he saw a documentary about someone who was a stable what do you call it, like a horse caretaker in the Queen's stables, and there was this interview with this British woman who was saying like there's nothing more that I love than brushing the Queen's horses, like. Now, it's not that she loves the physical activity of brushing the horses, it's that she's doing this for the Queen, and like it's the greatest enjoyment. So I do think that is a way that if this idea is real to you, you will love doing work because you're realizing it is a necessary means to be able to be involved in getting the Kesser Shel Torah. Oren?
Okay, two questions. So
Yeah.
One, if you're going to say that we'll love work because work will enable further Torah study, then
Yeah.
Kal v'chomer, shouldn't we love the rabbinate because then my work is Torah study? That's one question.
Okay.
And then I guess I'll just say the second question.
Yeah.
You can deal with each.
Sure.
Didn't he kind of imply earlier, or maybe it was later because I guess we go on. Didn't he imply elsewhere that that you need to be rich or have a lot of money to get the Kesser Shel Torah? Or did we dispel that notion?
Yeah, so we dispelled the notion. I think what you're remembering is that there's a shita, not the Rambam. There's a shita that says a navi has to be rich in order to get nevuah, and then the Rambam takes it though as not wealthy in money, but wealthy in terms of sameach b'chalko or wealthy in your midos. But regarding your first question of hating the rabbinate, so I can answer that according to the Rambam. Yeah, you want to say? So the Rambam, when he explained that, said that people who are involved in positions of prominence, first of all, it doesn't mean the rabbinate like we think of the rabbinate, because there's no job as being the rabbinate. But what he says is it means positions of leadership, because they often expose you to greater temptations, greater risks, greater time sucks, and so it can draw you away from it. That's how the Rambam said it.
But wait, if that's the case, then if being in such a position is so difficult, then doing that, then managing that position should be even better, right? Because what we said earlier, right? Like the suffering is equal to the reward.
Well, that's the suffering in terms of pulling away from the worldly values. This is like just to give examples, like if you have to, like the Rambam was a great example, right? Is that he was the Sultan's physician and he had to like basically slave away the whole day long because of his position of prominence, or let's say like, there were other Jewish leaders who were close to non-Jewish like monarchy that like put their lives in danger, because they had to like appease the non-Jewish government, that's the kind of thing the Rambam was warning against. Yeah, Chaim? Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's not the pain itself, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Correct. Yeah.
And then same way, that one thing I want to clarify.
Sure.
Every time I even know those things like in the pocket by in front of them.
Yeah.
Like, more that one.
Well, he does say shatis arev alav. Well, he says shatis arev alav hachachma. That's true, but it's not the work itself. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Right. Yeah. Right. I hear you. You're right. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. One more point here, which is you do see from all of this stuff about work that it is a delicate balance, right? You got to be involved in it, and there is a type of love you can have. You also have to view it as a necessary evil, both in terms of making money, but also so you don't fall into theft, but not get too overly attached to it and constantly trying to be mamayat it it is. So talk about like work-life balance for the person who wants to catch the Torah is very difficult, but this is the life we've chosen, gentlemen. Of saying what that oh, you mean how to do it practically? Yeah. I wonder, and there've been Sfarim written about everything under the sun. I wonder if there is a sefer by like a sefer of Chachma about how to do a work-life balance.
It just is the kind of thing where it's a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, right. But there's got to be principles. There's got to be principles here. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be so sure. I really don't know. Like for example, one of the again, just to bring it up because it's a good example of this, in the 4-hour work week, one of the things that he is very big on, which I understand can't be done in every profession, is delegation. So he says there are so many like CEOs like who are making tons of money, but who feel like they need to be involved in every single part of the process, where if they were to hire people to do stuff that is either mindless or people who they trust to be able to do stuff that they can take care of, then it just cuts out so much of that time, and they can have that time free. So like that is a practical principle that can apply in many, many different fields, that like I feel like it'd be nice to have like a list of those principles, or let's say another thing is like just like being kovea itim laTorah is a thing. Being kovea itim for business and not thinking about your business outside of that is a wise strategy. And like people giving themselves mental breaks, or like what I do again in terms of the like sanctifying time, in terms of having the half an hour to an hour in the morning of just reading where I'm not involved in anything else. Like there are strategies like this that I feel like would be good if someone who is an accomplished Kesher Torah possessor who also is successful in business like could put together. Yeah. Okay.
To be clear, so you're saying that when he says Usna et harabbanut, he's not talking about having a job of a rabbi. Is that what you're saying?
No, because that I don't think that job existed back then. That's like a very recent thing. Yeah.
When you say back then, referring back to time of the Mishnah or time of the Rambam?
Both. Yeah.
I could remember. I think there might have been something similar to the example where the way Muslim countries often run their churches, they for Christians and Jews and like other people, they say, okay, you govern yourselves.
Right, like Rais al-Yahud.
What?
Rais al-Yahud is what they call that position, right? The head of the Jews, right? That the Muslim caliphate would like appoint. Yeah. Say it again. That does sound familiar. I just don't know much about that period.
This is also like the Rish Galusta.
Right.
Where is it?
I get the impression that wasn't that was more of a figurehead position than a active running of the affairs of the community. I don't know though. I just want to pause this 1 second here. Okay. In fact, I bet there is a TTO shear on this the Mishnah of Kesher Torah, which we should totally look at. Okay. Anyway, but that would take us on beyond Rambam Bekius. Now, this last halacha we did not really think about so much, and I just want to get one point out of it. When we went there last time, Mala Gadola hi lemishu misparnis mimase yadav. It is a tremendous virtue for someone to earn a livelihood by the work of his own hands. Umidas chasidim harishonim hi, and it's the midah of chasidim rishonim. Okay. Uvezeh zoche l'chol kavod b'tova sheb'olam hazeh v'olam ba, and that's how you get every kavod in and good in this world. In the next world, Shneimar, as it says, Yigiya kapecha kitzochal ashakav tov lach. With the exertion of your hands, you will eat. It'll be happy and it'll be good for you. And it'll be good for you in the world to come, which is entirely good. So as if it wasn't already complicated enough, what's the ma'ala gedola to earn your own parnasa? Like up until now, it sounded like at the very minimum, a basic expectation or like a necessary evil. But now a ma'ala gedola and something that is a hallmark of Hasidim Harishonim.
So say by your hands, does that mean as to say don't be capitalist?
Or davka be capitalist?
I'm thinking I'm more thinking it says like capitalism is that you own the means of production, but like you're not actually working the means of production.
Oh, you mean is it davka like work of your like literal hands? That's good. Yeah.
In the sense like it has to be stuff you do as opposed to just having a trust fund.
It's a fair question. It is a fair question, right?
I mean,
What
it
does it
sounds like
mean,
it's
Nasa Yadav? Yeah.
It sounds like it's saying like, don't like be a trust fund person.
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. I never thought about that. Yeah, Oren, what's your question? We'll get back in a second, but yeah, Oren.
Not really a question. Yeah, kind of like what Yosef is saying. This sounds
Yeah.
very, very socialist. It sounds like he's saying that you should own your own means of production and that you should work it and that you shouldn't hire people and have them work and then take their surplus value. Like he's saying, don't do that. Own your own stuff and get money from your own stuff.
Well,
Don't.
okay,
hire
so
people.
yeah,
That's what it sounds like.
yeah. I mean, I
Maybe I'm
hear where you're
projecting.
getting that from because it says Maaseh Yadav, and again, if Maaseh Yadav is like people even use that term now. I earn my living with my own hands, you know, like or a person who works with his hands, you know. Yeah, yeah,
I'm not including them.
yeah.
That's not
Right.
okay. Second thing, people often think, oh, the CEO is like dominating job now, and like you know he's making a lot of money and like his job is to dominate whatever that is.
Right. Right.
He's not gonna say, oh, I didn't like want to get that. Like,
Yeah. So the question is, yeah.
So I guess we were just thinking back to a case where it's like I guess you have a stocks you only just never touch. They just
Right.
collect dividends.
Right.
I was saying that like you can't, as in you should not live just off of dividends. Where
Oh, so sorry. First,
a whole
yeah.
thing. Saying like, oh, someone gets money on their own, right? That you're not getting like stock on, like you know, just like
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And just to be clear, also, he's not saying don't do the opposite of this. He's saying doing this is a virtue. You know, he's not saying that it's bad to do this. And in fact, I'll just tell. I got to tell this another just YBT lore story. Pause recording. When the Rambam said earlier about loving work, I think the Rambam would say that like if you got a windfall, right? Like let's say you won the lottery, the Rambam would not say. Say again? No, I don't think he would say keep working either. Right. Yeah, exactly. You know, if you find that you know, that diamond or whatever, you know, so I don't think we should push this too far in that direction. Yeah.
Right. I don't think nothing other than
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah. Right. Right. So as opposed to what though? What would you say as opposed to? Right, but didn't he already exclude that earlier? Or no, sorry. He excluded tzedakah and he excluded being nenev from divrei Torah. But we can conceive of a situation where you are not being nenev from divrei Torah, but like you have money from.
I guess when you just, I like you.
Yeah,
you
right.
inherit
Right.
like a ton of stocks and you just get your money from dividends.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So that person is not going to partake. Exactly. Yeah. Right. So that person is not going to have this ma'ala, and not that it's bad. It's just he doesn't have this this virtue. Right. Yeah. So the question is why. Yeah. Right. So the question is like, what is the ma'ala here? You know. And he I mean he advertises it excessively, right? Like, what does that have to do with your olam haba? You know. I'll tell you where my mind goes, and this is just an association. Okay, when Chazal talk about how we discourage a Jew from being an indentured servant, like being an eved, you know, we say because it's you don't Chazal the that you are an eved Hashem, not an eved avadim, right? So and we also say like a lot in the tefillos, you know, of like. We shouldn't be dependent on other people, you know, that there is something that I think is harmful for perfection from being dependent on other people, you know, that it actually is harmful for your own perfection. I don't know what that is, but that's like the, yeah, go ahead. In other words, sorry, and just to complete it, is that you should be dependent on Hashem, not on human beings, because there's a lot of risks that come with that of like trusting in human beings or taking security or like, you know, stuff like that. Yeah. I'm just asking, generally speaking, that if we see that there are those risks, can we define the virtue of making your own living based on that? Yeah. Like, is it just that you're avoiding those risks? Sounds like it's more than that. It sounds like it's a virtue, you know, and it affects your olam haba also. Yeah, yeah. Like that, there is a certain virtue in making your own livelihood. That, yeah, I don't know what it is. I feel like I've read something from the Rav on it. Yeah. All right, let's. I don't want to dwell on it. Let's think about it and come back to it if we have something. Let's go on to the next halachos though, because this now we can connect to the tanugim thing. So this halacha, I think he is talking about the. He goes back to tanugim. He says, this is halacha yud beis. Ein divrei Torah miskaimin b'mi shemarape atzmo lehen. The words of Torah do not last or don't persist in someone who literally softens himself over them. Okay, which we have to figure out what that means. Okay, well, the Rambam Bekius says it means misrachel. He's lax. Okay, which is how it uses the word rafeh in at least Mishlei, right? It's like you're lax in your work. V'lo be'elu shalomni mitoch idun mitoch achila u'shasiya. Nor do the words of Torah persist in someone who learns out of opulence, delicacy, daintiness, whatever you want to say, idun is, and out of eating and drinking. I mean, that's one of the reasons I don't allow eating and drinking in this year, right? Yeah. Yeah, it seems like while you're doing it. Ella b'mishin memis atzmo alein. You have to kill yourself over Torah. Okay. U'mitzayir gufo tamid. Now it sounds like mitzayir gufo tamid is not just like be willing to undergo tsar. It sounds like he's saying afflict yourself, you know. V'lo yitin shanas le'inav la'afapav tenuma. And don't give sleep to your eyes and slumber to your eyelids. Okay. Yeah, right. Like wake up every what? Right. Yeah, right. Yeah. She didn't nishmasin or whatever, right? Like 60 breaths, however much that is. Yeah. Right. So the question is, what is these seem like two separate people, right? Being lax on Torah and then learning amid. I think that's what mitok means, like amid. Well, so how are you learning mitok? Meaning like you.
I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, Oren.
What does he mean that that it's not good? I mean, he doesn't say this, but that it's not good to learn like in amidst food. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Should we not give divrei Torah at meals, or are tishes not allowed? Like,
yeah.
What does that mean?
So that's a good question. Is what are the parameters of this, right? Practically, what are the parameters? But then also, you notice this is not directly an instruction about keser shel Torah. This is divrei Torah in miskaimin the mishim rape atmolem. And the question is, what does it mean that they're not miskayam, which really means to like persist? And it doesn't seem to mean you're going to forget them, because he said earlier, like, you know, he talked about forgetting Torah, you know, and he says shechacha, not eno miskayim, you know. And why does the opposite of this have to be to such an extreme? Like, fine, so just don't do it in a lax way and don't do it in out of achila and shasiya, but do you have to kill yourself over it and afflict yourself and not sleep?
Okay, well, in around with the reading.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it. But I mean, someone told me earlier
Right. Yeah.
And that one didn't have one, but you can add one to the top. And
Right, fine. We'll leave that for now.
But not you're not gonna have that if you're in the midst of the morning, you know, like also in the morning.
Yeah. So I yeah.
Like you're not like strong over the thing, and that's not something that like only on mind and you're really strong for it.
Right.
Then it'll be like
Right.
If you're like eating and drinking or whatever while you're learning and like you're like lax about it, then it's not as good.
Okay, so I think that what you said actually like increases my my conviction and my pshat here,
Okay.
which is that earlier he talked about someone who, in lifestyle terms, is involved in eating and drinking and doing Torah. This, I think, is eating and drinking at the same time that you're learning. Okay, and I think that the commonality is you are learning. You're only putting in half of your attention and energy. You're multitasking basically. You're either not putting your energy into Torah entirely, like you're listening to a shiur and like doing stuff on your computer while you're doing it, or you are, if you've ever, speaking of the Dvar Torah thing, if you've ever been at a meal where someone's giving a Dvar Torah and people are eating or people are asking to pass stuff, they're not paying attention to what's being said, so if that is how you engage in Torah, where you're either not putting in your full energy or where your energy is divided to another pleasure, which is really a more primal based pleasure, then your Torah is not going to be miskayim, which I don't know what that means yet. Yeah, Yosef?
Question, like, what if the alternative is just you not learning during that time?
Right. So I've asked that question before also, and I do think for us, then if the alternative is not learning during that time, then it's better that we do learn, like like listen to shiur while I'm doing other stuff, and I think the only danger would be is certain shiurim I don't listen to while I'm doing other stuff, because I know that if I only get half of it, it's going to be actually harmful. Like I would not listen to a halacha shiur while I am doing something that my attention is divided, Yeah, Oren?
Maybe the reason why he only says Ein Divrei Torah Mitkaymin is because it's not necessarily like a bad thing, right? It's not bad to listen to a Dvar Torah during a meal. It's just not as good. So he's not going to go like all out and say it's a terrible thing to do. He just says it's not acquired like permanently, or it's not,
Right. Yeah, that is definitely true. He's definitely not as harsh here as he is as he was earlier. And just before I forget, factually speaking, the Rambam, I believe, would hold you should not give a Dvar Torah. Not that you shouldn't give a Dvar Torah during the meal, but that people should not be involved in talking Torah during meals. I think he says it explicitly in his Derech Eretz for the Suda that it's a choking hazard. I think he's big on the choking hazard.
It's not also like, yeah, but that reminds me of like something.
I know it's not
I
right,
guess I assume he.
but I'm saying that he wouldn't address the Talmud Torah thing because he already holds you're not talking while you're eating.
Switch that preference, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I'm gonna put that when I mean
Yeah. Come again? I didn't get it. Right.
And then one of the only other option is not only that time. Why was that different in the round? Why is it in that? Now
I was a
Right. No, but what he's saying
No,
though is
I was not saying that.
Right.
I was not.
And what do you get to do? What do you
No, I was not saying it was more like Warren is like talking about just the scenario where you have I guess pizza and Torah, like a pizza and Torah thing, where it's talking about the scenario where like your day's packed with Torah, and it's just like, and you still want to add some more in, and the only like spaces you have.
right. I mean, I hear. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I hear that argument. That does make sense. Right. Right. The only basis though. So the only basis though that you could say though, I think for maintaining what Yosef is saying is that the Rambam would say that that Torah is not going to be miskayim, but you should do it anyway. It's just that if this is going to be a regular thing, or let's say like I do think it changes the way you relate to the learning that you do while you're eating. Like if you're aware of this phenomenon and if what the pshat I'm saying is true, you will not engage in a weighty type of learning while you're eating. Yeah.
I guess also addition, but you know that you could also end up giving yourself more time to eat because you think you're losing less and therefore lose more.
Give you some right. That's a danger. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I just want to check and see if Kavik addresses how we're supposed to read this about the mitoch thing, just to make sure that I'm reading right. Yeah. Right. So here's what he says. I haven't read this yet, but he says, "B'Sanhedrin Kuf Yud Amud Aleph Lo Timsa Be'eretz HaChaim Lo Timsa Torah B'Misha Mechaye Atzmo Aleha." So I guess it must be a pasuk that says, "You will not find it in the land of the living, And the drush is, you will not find Torah in someone who is being mechaye himself over it, meaning, I guess, like doing stuff to sustain his life while he's learning Torah. U'v'tanchuma, Parshas Noach Gimel, Shlo timsa Torah shebal peh eto mishivakesh oning ha'olam taiva v'kavod gedula ba'olam hazeh. That's like the closer to what you were saying before. Ela b'misha memis atzmo aleha shnemar zosa Torah adam kiyamos ba'ohel. Yeah, fine. So that's the drush he was quoting there. Yeah, but I think it is what I was saying before. And then the while we're here, when he says the misrapel atzmo aleim is from Gemara Eruvin. Amravi acha, I assume. My dichsiv luchos evan. What is written? What does it mean when it says the tablets of stone? Im adam mesim es lechio ke'evan. If he makes his lechi, his like a maw, like his jaw, like an evan. Zo she'ena nimches talmudo she'eno nimches. That is not nimches, dissolved. Talmudo miskayim biado. Bim lo ein talmudo miskayim biado. I don't know what that means. Oh, soft meaning. Yeah, it's not soft. What does that mean? It doesn't make lechio. I don't know what this is. I have to look it up inside, which I'm not going to do right now. Let's just read the next halacha just to set us up for tomorrow, because this is also related. He quotes the drasha that I just read. Amru chachamim derech remez. The chachamim said by way of allusion, Zos Torah. This is the Torah. Adam kiyamos ba'ohel. When a man dies in a tent. Now, plain shot is this is the law of when a man dies in the tent, but the drasha is this is the Torah with a capital T. A man when he dies in the tent. Okay, what does that mean? Torah only persists in someone who kills himself in the tents of chachma. So this is a weird drasha. Hisra pisa biyom tzara tsar kochacha. In Mishnah it says if you become lax on a day of trouble, your strength will become narrowed. I don't know what that means. But Od Amru Amar Shlomo also says in Koheles, Af chachmasi amdali, which the pshat is even my chachma remained with me, but the drush is chachma shalamarti be'af amdali. The chachma I learned in anger remained with me. Now here he clearly doesn't mean anger like kas, because you should never have kas. And clearly contextually, this anger means something harsh living conditions. I don't know. So we have to figure that out for tomorrow. Bli neder. Oh. It could be. I mean, yeah. Oh, so that could be. Yeah. What would be a good English word that means anger, but also means what you're talking about?
You're angry and struggling yourself with it.
Yeah, like you're struggling. You're fighting with it. Yeah. Okay. Let's stop here for today and think about it for tomorrow. Yeah. All right. See ya.